Welcome, night traveler. Maybe you're watching from bed, the world around you quiet, or maybe you're simply letting the past keep you company for a while. Tonight, we walk through shadows of time listening to the echoes of those who came before us. Where are you watching from? What hour finds you here? I always love hearing from fellow wanderers. If stories of ancient lives and forgotten paths speak to you, consider subscribing. There's so much more waiting just beneath the surface. Let's begin. Imagine a world where we were not the only humans. Not long ago, in the grand sweep of time, we shared this earth with others. They hunted, laughed, mourned, and created beside us. But now, they're gone. All that remains are fragments, bones buried in caves, tools shaped by careful hands, whispers of DNA that still live within us. This isn't a myth. This isn't fiction. This is our forgotten family. The idea feels strange, doesn't it? Most of us grow up believing history is a straight line, primitive to modern, ape to man, cave to city. But reality is far more tangled. Human history is not a line, it's a web. And for thousands of years, we were just one thread among many. Let's travel back not just to kings and castles, but further, past the Romans, past the pyramids, past even the first farms. Back to a time when the world was colder, wilder, and filled with different kinds of humans. In this world, you might have met a Neanderthal walking through a forest in what is now France. You might have stumbled upon a Denisovan shelter deep in the mountains of Siberia, or crossed paths with a tiny hobbit creature on an island in Indonesia. It's not fantasy, it's science, and it's reshaping everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Let's pull back the curtain on what it really meant to be human when we weren't alone. The story begins not in a palace or a battlefield, but in a cave. A cave lit only by torchlight and curiosity. In 1856, in the Neander Valley of Germany, workers digging for limestone stumbled upon something strange: bones that looked human, but not quite. The skull was thicker, the brow heavier, the limbs more robust. At first, many believed it was simply a diseased man, or perhaps even a Viking warrior. But as more bones turned up across Europe, it became clear these were not modern humans. These were a different kind of people, and they were everywhere. The Neanderthals weren't a fluke. They were a whole branch of humanity thriving for hundreds of thousands of years. Strong, intelligent, adapted to the Ice Age. They hunted mammoths, wore furs, buried their dead, and even cared for the wounded. But they weren't the only ones. In 2008, in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, another revelation surfaced. From a small child's finger bone preserved for tens of thousands of years, scientists extracted DNA. What they found stunned them. It wasn't Neanderthal, and it wasn't modern human. It was something new, a whole new lineage, a ghost branch of humanity. They named them the Denisovans, after the cave in which they were found. To this day, we know almost nothing about how they looked, spoke, or lived. Their physical remains are rare: just a few teeth, a jawbone, and fragments of bone, but their DNA tells us they were real, and that they left a legacy. If you are of Asian, Oceanian, or indigenous Australian descent, you likely carry Denisovan DNA in your body today, and these two Neanderthals and Denisovans were not outliers. In recent decades, scientists have discovered other strange and fascinating human species. On the island of Flores, a tiny hominin only a meter tall, nicknamed the Hobbit, was discovered. On Luzon, another island in the Philippines, came Homo luzonensis, equally mysterious. And deep in a cave system in South Africa, explorers found Homo naledi, a species with a small brain but complex behaviors, including what may have been ritual burials. We are not the inevitable outcome of human evolution. We are one surviving branch among many. That's the key to understanding this journey. We didn't defeat these other humans in some grand battle. In fact, we lived alongside them for tens of thousands of years. Homo sapiens, us, and other humans shared the planet. There were encounters, exchanges, and sometimes even love. Genetic evidence proves we interbred. Some of us carry Neanderthal or Denisovan genes even now. So, why did they vanish, and we remained? It's a question that has haunted scientists for years. Some believe climate shifts wiped them out. Others suggest disease, isolation, or competition for resources. But the truth is likely more complex. They didn't all vanish at once. They faded slowly, species by species, over generations. And some, as we now know, have truly disappeared at all, not entirely. They live on in us. And that's what makes this story so haunting, so human. As we begin this journey through deep time, let's change how we think about prehistoric man. These weren't grunting savages with clubs. They were people, intelligent, emotional, social. They used tools, made art, cared for their children. Some painted caves, others shaped intricate bone jewelry. Many buried their dead with care. And here's something even more powerful. They looked at the same moon we do, walked under the same stars, huddled around fires, listening to the wind. In the trees, they didn't have writing, but they had stories passed by word, by gesture, by tradition. And though we'll never know exactly what they said, we can feel their echoes all around us, because their blood still runs in our veins. You see, we've long told history from the viewpoint of the victor, but now, we're starting to listen to the silenced, the forgotten, the nearly lost. Ancient DNA is like a time machine. It lets us hear the whispers of those who once walked beside us, long before history books were written. This is not just anthropology. This is identity. We are not separate from these people. We are part of them. Our story is their story. And now, together, we'll walk that story from the beginning. In the next chapter, we'll step even further back in time to the dawn of the human journey itself. We'll meet our earliest ancestors, walk the savannas of Africa, and see how one genus Homo emerged to shape the world. But before we go, remember this: you are not just one human in a modern world. You are the result of countless survivors of species, of struggles, of stories etched into bone and blood. You are a mosaic of those who came before, and tonight, they are calling you to remember. Not with fear, not with sorrow, but with wonder, because the past isn't dead. It's not even gone, it's within you. Let's slow time to a crawl. Forget the ticking of clocks, the dates in textbooks, the names carved into history's stone. They are recent fleeting sparks in a much older fire. Let us begin, instead, with the silence of a world before us. A world forming itself rock by rock, storm by storm, life by accident. Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and for most of that time, it did not know us. No cities, no language, no memory, just ocean and stone, sky and flame. Then life. First small, simple, hidden in the sea. Then stranger, more complex, crawling, climbing, devouring, dividing. Insects, reptiles, the thunder of dinosaurs. But even they are gone now, fossils pressed into forgotten beds of stone. And still, no humans. We are not ancient. We are not the first. In the grand calendar of Earth, we have only just arrived. If Earth's history were a single day, humanity would emerge in the final seconds before midnight. But when we did arrive, we did not arrive alone. To understand that, we need to go back millions of years, not to written records, but to the bones beneath our feet. To the beginning of us. The dawn of Homoneser's story begins in Africa. It always does. Roughly 7 million years ago, something changed. In the forests and grasslands where apes lived, one lineage began to walk upright. Not all the time, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to see further. Enough to carry food. Enough to change everything. These were not humans. Not yet. But they were something new. We call them hominins, the broader family that includes us and all our extinct relatives. One of the earliest known was Sahelanthropus tadensis, discovered in Chad. A small skull, around 7 million years old, with a mix of ape-like and human-like features. Was it our direct ancestor? Maybe, maybe not. In deep time, nothing is certain, but it's a marker, a beginning. Then came Australopithecus, the most famous. Is Lucy, found in Ethiopia in 1974. She lived 3.2 million years ago. She walked upright, but still climbed trees. Her brain was small, but her world was vast, filled with predators. shifting climates, and countless survival challenges. And yet, she lived. Her kind endured for millions of years. No language, no fire, just instincts, tools made of stone, and the first flickers of something we now call humanity. And then, around 2.5 million years ago, a new genus emerged. Homo entered. The genus Homo, the earliest member we know of, is Homo habilis, handy man. The name comes from his tools, simple flakes of stone, used to cut, to scrape, to survive. With these, he entered a new age, not just adaptation, but innovation. For time, others followed. Homo erectus, upright man, was perhaps the greatest pioneer in human history. He appeared around 2 million years ago and did something no hominin had done before. He left Africa. Imagine it, for millions of years, no human relative had crossed continents, but Homo erectus walked, slowly, in groups, across savannas, rivers, deserts, into the Middle East, Asia, even Europe. Wherever he went, he adapted, built fires, crafted better tools. His brain grew larger. His body became more suited for long-distance travel. Some of the earliest fossils found in Indonesia and China belong to him or his descendants. In a real sense, Homo erectus was the first world traveler, and from his line came a diversity of humans. He is our ancestor, but also there's Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others not yet discovered. His legacy is everywhere. But what's remarkable is not just his spread, it's the world he helped create. A world no longer filled with a single hominin species, but many. A crowded world. We tend to picture early humans as rare, scattered across a wild landscape. And yes, populations were small, but they were not alone. From about 500,000 years ago onward, the Earth hosted multiple human species at once. They evolved in parallel, sometimes in contact, sometimes apart. In Africa, Homo heidelbergensis gave rise to both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. In Europe and the Near East, Neanderthals flourished. In Asia, Denisovans emerged. And on isolated islands, evolutionary experiments unfolded. Tiny Homo floresiensis on Flores, mysterious Homo luzonensis in the Philippines. Each was uniquely shaped by its environment. Short, tall, cold-adapted, island-dwarfed, long-limbed, dark-eyed, cave-dwelling, fire-making, tool-wielding. There was not one way to be human. There were many. And yet, through all of this, Homo sapiens had not yet arrived. We were not first. We were not special, not yet. The birth of modern humans roughly 300,000 years ago, in what is now Morocco, a new face appeared in the fossil record, more slender, with a high forehead, round skull, and lighter bones. Our face. These were the first known Homo sapiens. And while they were not identical to us, our full form would take time. They were recognizably modern. They used complex tools, likely had language. They thought, they planned, they remembered. And they were not alone. As Homo sapiens emerged in Africa, Neanderthals were thriving in Europe. Denisovans inhabited parts of Asia. Homo naledi may still have existed in South Africa. Homo floresiensis lived on its island in Indonesia. The world was a mosaic of humanity. And then, something changed. Out of Africarans 70,000 years ago, a group of Homo sapiens began to leave Africa. They had done this before. There were earlier migrations. But this one was different. This one lasted. It spread across the Arabian Peninsula, into India, along the coasts of Asia, into Australia, then Europe, then eventually, the Americas. Everywhere they went, Homo sapiens encountered new environments and other humans. This is where the story turns from evolutionary science to mystery, because, not long after we spread, they began to vanish. The vanishing of the other Neanderthals after 300,000 years disappeared around 40,000 years ago. Denisovans, once widespread across Asia, left only DNA and fragments. The hobbits of Flores and Luzon, gone. Homo naledi, with its eerie, ritualistic cave burials, extinct. Only we remained. why? It's the haunting question behind this entire story. What made Homo sapiens the survivor? Was it our tools? Our adaptability? Our ability to form large groups, share culture, build alliances? Or was it something darker? Did we push them out by competition? By warfare? By spreading diseases they couldn't resist? Perhaps it was not one thing, but many. Climate shifts, resource scarcity, genetic bottlenecks, or simply the roll of evolutionary dice. But whatever the reason, by around 30,000 years ago, Earth had only one kind of human left, us, and the others who had lived, loved, crafted, hunted, dreamed became ghosts, echoes in our blood for a long time. Scientists believed we were entirely separate from these ancient cousins, that Neanderthals and Denisovans were evolutionary dead ends. But then came the DNA revolution. In 2010, a groundbreaking discovery shattered the old assumptions. Modern non-African humans carry Neanderthal DNA, up to 2%. Not in isolated individuals, but in all of us. The story deepened. Denisovan DNA was found too, especially in Melanesian and Australian Aboriginal populations, where it can reach 5. These weren't brief encounters. These were real relationships. Interbreeding happened more than once, in multiple regions. A tangled web of intimacy and ancestry. We are not pure Homo sapiens. No one is. We are hybrids of survival, migration, of memory. The blood of Neanderthals flows in the cells of Europeans and Asians. The Denisovans speak through the genes of those from Oceania. The islanders of Flores and Luzon are silent, but who knows what fragments of their essence remain in us still. When we say we must remember, we have always been many. The world before civilization, be the time agriculture emerged just 12,000 years ago, all other human species were gone. The long, tangled branches of our family tree had withered, leaving one leaf. Homo sapiens. We spread across the planet, built cities, wrote history, invented gods, drew lines between us and them. But deep in our DNA, the truth remained. We are not alone in the past, not in our biology, not in our inheritance. Our history is not a single path. It is a braided river with channels that split and merge, vanish and return, flowing together into the present. We did not emerge victorious. We emerged lucky. We survive. And with that survival came a burden to remember, setting the stage for what comes next. Now that we've walked this road of deep time millions of years in a few heartbeats, we're ready to dive deeper. In the chapters ahead, we'll meet the Neanderthals not as brutish caricatures, but as sophisticated beings. We'll trace the mysteries of the Denisovans, the legends of the island hobbits, and the dark rituals of Homo naledi. We'll explore what made Homo sapiens different and whether that difference was a gift or a curse. Most of all, we'll ask, what does it mean to be human if we were never alone? Because once, we weren't the only ones who lit fires in the dark, and somewhere, maybe deep inside, we still remember. The world we inherited once belonged to many. It's easy to imagine ourselves as the pinnacle, the lone species that rose, advanced, conquered. But that's a fantasy, a comforting illusion. The truth is stranger and far more beautiful. We were never meant to be alone. For hundreds of thousands of years, the world was filled with different kinds of humans. Some were tall, some small, some adapted to cold, others to forests or highlands. Some vanished in silence, others left their legacy in our bones. Let us meet them not as footnotes in our story, but as living beings with faces, hopes, and names, carved from the earth itself. 1. The Neanderthals, our closest cousins. Our journey begins with the most famous of them all, the Neanderthals. Their bones first emerged from the soil in 1856 in the Neander Valley, Germany, giving them their name. At first, they were misunderstood, painted as brutish, primitive, almost animal, bent backs, heavy brows, slow minds. But science, as always, revealed a deeper truth. The Neanderthals were not beasts. They were brilliant survivors. They lived across Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years longer than Homo sapiens have existed. Their world was harsh, defined by shifting glaciers, bitter winters, and megafauna like woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats. And yet, they thrived. Neanderthals were strong, stocky, broad-chested, with thick bones and powerful limbs. Their skulls were large, even slightly larger than ours, with long, sloping foreheads and prominent brow ridges. But behind those ridges lay minds capable of art, empathy, and innovation. They hunted in coordinated groups, using spears crafted with precision. They tanned hides, wore clothing, and sheltered in caves and open-air structures. They used fire. They cared for their sick and injured. Some even survived without limbs, meaning they were looked after for years. And yes, they buried their dead at sites like Shanidar Cave in Iraq. Neanderthal remains have been found with pollen from flowers, suggesting ceremonial burials. 1. Skeleton even shows signs of a blow to the head, and that he was gently laid to rest. Another individual had lost an arm, was blind in one eye, and yet lived into old age. His people had not left him behind. Were they religious? We don't know, but they mourned, they remembered. And then, some 40,000 years ago, they vanished, but not entirely. Today, almost every person with European or Asian ancestry carries between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. Traits like skin tone, immune responses, and even mood disorders may trace back to them. We didn't replace the Neanderthals. We absorbed them, and through us, they live on. 2. The Denisovans, ghosts of the mountains. In 2010, in the remote Denisova cave in Siberia, scientists discovered something unexpected. A finger bone. It was small, delicate. At first glance, unremarkable, but when its DNA was analyzed, the results shook the scientific world. This bone did not belong to a Neanderthal, nor did it match Homo sapiens. It was a new species. They were named Denisovans, after the cave in which they were found, but much about them remains a mystery. We don't know what they looked like. We have no complete skull, only fragments, a few teeth, a jawbone, part of a limb. And yet their DNA reveals a vast legacy. Denisovans were widespread, ranging from Siberia to Southeast Asia. They lived for tens of thousands of years, alongside both Neanderthals and modern humans. And like the Neanderthals, they left traces in us. People from Melanesia, Papua New Guinea, and indigenous Australians carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. In Tibet, a Denisovan gene allows humans to breathe easily at high altitudes, a gift that may have come from interbreeding more than 40,000 years ago. Imagine that. Your ability to hike a mountain without gasping for air might come from a long extinct species we've never even seen a full skeleton of. They are genetic ghosts present, yet invisible. A vanished people, whose stories we read not in books, but in blood. 3. The Hobbits. Homo floresiensis. In 2003, on the Indonesian island of Flores, archaeologists were exploring a limestone cave called Liang Bua when they made a discovery that defied logic. They found a skeleton. It was tiny, just over a meter tall. The skull was small, with a brain no bigger than a grapefruit. The bones were ancient, about 60,000 to 100,000 years old. At first, many believed it was a diseased modern human, but more skeletons were found, each with the same features. This was no pathology, it was a species. They named it Homo floresiensis, but the world knew them by another name, the Hobbits. How could such a small species exist so recently? The answer lies in island evolution. On isolated islands, evolution follows strange rules. Large animals tend to shrink, small animals grow. With limited predators and resources, size becomes negotiable. Elephants become dwarfs, rats grow massive, and humans, they become hobbits. Homo floresiensis hunted pygmy elephants. They used stone tools, they had fire. They lived for tens of thousands of years, possibly until as recently as 50,000 years ago. And then, like so many others, they disappeared. Did they meet Homo sapiens? Were they wiped out, or outcompeted, Or did natural disaster bring their end? We may never know, but their bones whisper of a lost world where small people carved out a life in caves by torchlight, among the volcanoes and rivers of a forgotten island. 4. Homo luzonensis, the mystery of the Peloponnesian, 2007. In Callao Cave on the island of Luzon in the Philippines, a foot bone was found. It looked old, very old, but again, the shape was strange. Not quite human, not like any known species. More bones followed: teeth, fingers, a femur, and in 2019, scientists announced the discovery of a new species, Homo luzonensis. They lived at least 67,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. Like the hobbits of Flores, they were small, with curved toes and primitive traits, suggesting they retained some climbing abilities. Yet they also had unique dental features not seen in other hominins. They didn't walk here by accident. The Philippines is surrounded by deep sea. These humans, like others before them, had to cross water, perhaps on rafts, perhaps by accident, but they made it. They adapted. They survived. Until, again, they didn't. Another human species lost. Another cousin whose voice we'll never hear. But their story reminds us humans were everywhere, not just in the centers of civilization, but in forests, mountains, islands, living, breathing, enduring. 5. Homo naledi, the cave of the dead, South Africa, 2013. Deep in the Rising Star cave system, more than 30 meters underground, a narrow, twisting chute led to a dark chamber. It was almost impossible to access, tight, claustrophobic, utterly silent. Inside, scientists found bones, hundreds of them, from at least 15 individuals, adults, children, even infants. They belonged to a new species, Homo naledi. But what truly shocked researchers wasn't the bones, it was their age. At first, scientists assumed they were ancient, perhaps 2 million years old. But dating revealed the truth. They were just 250,000 to 300,000 years old. That's recent. That's the same period modern humans were emerging. Yet Homo naledi had a brain only a third the size of ours. Their skulls were primitive. Their teeth resembled early hominins. And yet, they placed their dead in deep, inaccessible caves. Why? No animals had dragged the bodies there. There was no evidence of natural disasters. It appeared intentional, deliberate, ritual. They were burying their dead. But how could a species with such a small brain perform such complex behavior? Did they understand death? Did they believe in something beyond? We don't know. But Homo naledi challenges everything we thought we knew about intelligence, culture, and what it means to be human. They were not our ancestors. They were something else, something parallel, another path, and we were not the only ones contemplating the dark. 6. Others yet to be discovered. The story of human evolution is not finished. In 2019, researchers studying the DNA of modern African populations found traces of a mysterious ancient human one that doesn't match Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or Denisovans. A ghost species, perhaps, one we haven't yet found in the fossil record, and there may be more. The fossil record is incomplete. Entire regions like Central Africa, parts of Asia, and pockets of Europe remain unexplored. The Earth still holds secrets, and every year, those secrets come closer to the surface. We may yet meet more cousins, more names, more lives, because the human story isn't just long, it's layered, hidden, waiting. We were manna so often. We tell the story of humanity as a single line, from ape to man, from darkness to light. But the truth is richer. We were never alone. The earth was once filled with humans, not identical, primitive, but diverse, creative, alive. And they were not failed versions of us. They were complete stories in their own right. We walk with their DNA. We dream with their echoes. We inherit not only the earth they walked, but the questions they left behind. Why did we survive? Why did they not? What did they believe? What did they feel? Were they proud? Were they afraid? Were they like us? In the next chapter, we explore those moments when worlds collided, when Homo sapiens stepped into lands already occupied. Encounters with Neanderthals, secrets passed in genes, love and war, coexistence and extinction. We'll explore what happened when many humans met and only one walked away. But now, as you breathe quietly in your room, perhaps thousands of years after the last Neanderthal drew their final breath, know this: you are not the first, you are not the only, you are the memory. There was a time when meeting another kind of human was not a thought experiment, it was a reality. You walk through a forest at dusk, the air thick with the smell of pine and earth. The trees whisper with the wind. Ahead, you hear the crunch of feet on leaves, not an animal, not a predator, but someone almost like you. His face is unfamiliar, yet eerily close. Heavy brow, broad nose, strong limbs. His eyes meet yours. He is not frightened, he is watching. And just like that, the world feels different. Because you are not alone. For tens of thousands of years, different human species lived side by side. They shared landscapes, rivers, caves, and although many of these encounters have been lost to time, the traces are still there in our bones, our blood, our stories. This is the chapter of contact, of shared fires, mingled bloodlines, and perhaps even ancient rivalries. A time when the world was crowded not with nations, but with kinds of humans. A tangled web of time. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, first emerged in Africa around 300,000 years ago. For nearly 200,000 years, we remained mostly on that continent, developing complex tools, symbolic behavior, and perhaps early language. But something changed around 70,000 years ago. Small group left, perhaps following game, perhaps driven by climate, perhaps by sheer curiosity. They moved across the Red Sea into the Arabian Peninsula. From there, the world opened like a map, and so began the Great Expansion. But this new world was not empty. Europe belonged to the Neanderthals. Asia was home to Denisovans. The islands of Southeast Asia sheltered Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis. The world was not waiting for us, it was already occupied. And so, contact became inevitable. When sapiens met Neanderthals, first and best documented encounters happened in the Levant, modern-day Israel, Palestine, Syria around 60,000 years ago. Archaeological sites show overlapping periods of Neanderthal and modern human presence. Tools mix, cave layers alternate, fire pits whisper of shared spaces. At first, the evidence suggested replacement. Homo sapiens arrived, and Neanderthals disappeared. But DNA told another story. In 2010, scientists decoded the Neanderthal genome. The results were startling. All non-African humans today share between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. This could only mean one thing: we didn't just compete with Neanderthals, we interbred with them. And not just once, multiple times, in multiple regions. In fact, recent analysis suggests that the ancestors of modern Eurasians may have encountered Neanderthals as early as 70,000 years ago before entering Europe. Later waves mixed again. Some of the genes we carry from them today relate to immunity, skin pigmentation, metabolism, even the risk of depression or nicotine addiction. But what did these encounters look like? Were they violent, peaceful? Was it mutual respect or forced contact? It's hard to say. In some places, Neanderthal populations declined rapidly after Homo sapiens arrived. In others, they lingered for millennia, their tools growing more similar to ours. Some scientists believe there may have been cultural exchange, Neanderthals copying our ornaments, or vice versa. Others suggest Neanderthals developed certain technologies independently. Either way, the lines began to blur. And then, around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals were gone. Europe was ours, but the legacy remained in our genes, in our defenses against disease, and perhaps even in our dreams. Encounters with the Denisovans. Story of Homo sapiens meeting Denisovans is even more mysterious. We have almost no skeletal remains. We've never reconstructed a face, and yet, the genetic evidence is powerful. People from Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, and indigenous Australians carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. This suggests that Denisovans were widespread and that Homo sapiens interbred with them at least twice, in different locations. One Denisovan gene, the EPOS1 allele, enables high-altitude adaptation in Tibetans. This trait, crucial for life in the Himalayas, is absent in other humans. It likely entered our genome from Denisovans over 40,000 years ago. What's more intriguing, in the Altai Mountains, where the Denisova cave lies, scientists found a fossil of a teenage girl with a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. A first-generation hybrid. This isn't theory. This is fact. Different humans didn't just meet. They bonded. They raised children. They crossed divides of culture and species. We don't know what language they spoke, or if they had language at all, but clearly, they understood something about each other, enough to share lives. And just like with Neanderthals, Denisovans eventually faded, but their influence lingers in our lungs, in our blood oxygen, in our ability to survive where others would gasp for air. They are not gone. They are part of us. What about the hobbits? On the islands of Southeast Asia, something stranger was happening. When modern humans reached Flores around 50,000 years ago, Homo floresiensis may still have been alive. The evidence is not yet conclusive, but the overlap is possible. Could Homo sapiens have encountered the hobbits? If so, what happened? We can only speculate. No genetic material has been recovered from H. floresiensis, and no signs of hybridization have been found. Perhaps the two species avoided each other. Perhaps conflict drove the smaller species into extinction. Or perhaps they were already dwindling when we arrived. What's more chilling are the oral traditions of the local people. Among the indigenous populations of Flores, stories persist of the Ibu Gogo, a small, hairy, human-like creature that lived in caves, spoke in murmurs, and stole food from villagers. These tales were passed down long before archaeology came to the island. Is it mere myth, or a fading memory of an encounter lost to time? The same goes for Luzon. Homo luzonensis may have survived long enough to see the arrival of Homo sapiens in the Philippines, but we have no direct evidence of contact. Still, the fact remains, we entered a world with multiple kinds of humans, and, soon after, only one kind remained. The question of violence: did we kill them? It's a question many are afraid to ask, but we must. Because coexistence doesn't always mean peace. In some regions, the archaeological record shows sudden cultural shifts, new tool types, faster hunting methods. Could this suggest competition, displacement, war? It's possible. Homo sapiens had advantages: better tools, longer range weapons, more complex social structures. We may have simply outcompeted them, took the best hunting grounds, drained their food sources. Some Neanderthal sites show signs of trauma wounds made by weapons. At one site in France, a Neanderthal child was found with a spear tip lodged in the vertebra. But was it murder, a skirmish, a rare clash? We can't say for sure, but the possibility hangs heavy that perhaps, to survive, we didn't just adapt, we eliminated. The role of disappearance. Their theory suggests a quieter killer: disease. Modern humans migrating out of Africa may have carried pathogens unfamiliar to other hominins, like the Columbian Exchange, where European diseases devastated Native Americans. Homo sapiens might have unknowingly brought plagues to their cousins: a flu, a parasite, a fever that swept through a Neanderthal clan with no resistance. The result would be devastating and invisible in the fossil record. This theory doesn't paint us as villains, but as vectors, carriers of change, unintentional reapers. It's a chilling possibility that contact itself was fatal. Cultural superiority? Another advantage Homo sapiens may have held lies in our minds. Around the time we entered Europe, a burst of creativity appears: cave paintings in Lascaux and Chauvet, ivory figurines, musical instruments, beads, burial rites. The human revolution, as it's sometimes called. Perhaps our ancestors could share knowledge across generations more efficiently, build myths, tell stories, inspire coordination beyond the clan. Perhaps it was this culture that gave us the edge. If we could organize better, imagine further, adapt faster, then even if Neanderthals were our equals physically, they might not have kept up. One species imagined gods, the other watched the stars in silence, and maybe that made all the difference. Hybrid, heart still, not all was war. The DNA doesn't lie. There were unions, real ones. What did those families look like? A Neanderthal mother rocking a hybrid child, a Denisovan man teaching his son to shape stone, a Homo sapiens woman sharing firelight with a cousin species. They must have learned each other's ways, shared food, grieved together, loved. It's easy to forget this amid talk of extinction, but the fact remains, we mingled. And that means we didn't just conquer, we connected. The final merging be around 30,000 years ago. We were the last humans on Earth, but we were no longer the same as we had been. We had changed, absorbed genes, perhaps even habits, from those we met. We became a hybrid species, not just biologically, but culturally. In our mythology, in our monsters, in our fairy tales, perhaps echoes of them remain. Trolls under bridges, hairy forest dwellers, ancient ones living in shadows. Maybe those stories are not pure invention. Maybe they are memories twisted by time, but rooted in reality. Because we didn't just survive, we inherited echoes in the present today. Your body tells a story older than your name. If your ancestry traces to Europe or Asia, you carry Neanderthal genes. If you're from Oceania or Southeast Asia, Denisovan traces lie in your cells, your skin's reaction to sunlight, your immune system, the shape of your jaw. They're all whispers from cousins long gone. We walk not alone, but as living archives, genetic museums of humanity's shared past. Every heartbeat carries history, what it means to be humanauts. We were men, now we are one. But what does that mean? Are we the best, or just the last? Did we inherit the earth by right, or by chance? These are not academic questions. They strike at the root of identity. If we see ourselves as part of a family, not a lonely species, but a chorus, then perhaps we learn humility. We are not the peak, we are the remnant. And that knowledge carries weight, because as we face new extinctions, new frontiers, and new questions about what humanity means in the age of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and space travel, we would do well to remember, we are not alone by nature, only by history. In the next part, we'll explore how science uncovered this tangled past, from DNA analysis to archaeological mysteries. A journey not only through what happened, but how we found out. For in every broken bone and buried tooth lies a message, and we've only just begun to understand what they were trying to say. Every ancient bone holds a secret, every chipped stone, every dusty tooth, every grain of soil hiding beneath layers of time, all of them are waiting to be understood, waiting to speak. But these secrets are not easily heard. They don't scream, they whisper, and to listen, we had to become something new. Not just storytellers, but detectives, scientists, time travelers, armed with microscopes instead of swords. This is the story not of the ancient humans themselves, but of how we found them, how we pieced together their faces, their fates, and our place among them. Because science did not give us answers all at once. It gave us fragments, and we had to learn how to read the bones in the earth. The first class, the science of human origins, begins in the dirt. In the 19th century, European explorers began to find unusual bones. First, in the Neander Valley of Germany in 1856, a heavy-browed skull, unlike any modern human. Then in Belgium, then Croatia. At first, no one wanted to believe it. The idea that humans were not alone in their evolutionary story was considered blasphemous, even absurd. But the bones kept coming. Some were buried deep, others lay exposed by erosion, or war, or chance. Each one raised more questions. Who were these people? Why did they vanish? Were they our ancestors, or something else? By the early 20th century, Paleoanthropology had taken root, the study of ancient human remains. It was slow, dusty work, excavating caves, sifting through dirt, mapping sites layer by layer. But it would take something even smaller than a bone to truly change the game. It would take DNA. The genetic revolution. Imagine trying to read a book, but most of the pages are gone. Now imagine discovering that one of the remaining pages is written not in ink, but in code, a sequence of chemicals, billions of letters long. That's what DNA is, the instruction manual of life. And inside that code is a record of every ancestor we've ever had. In the 1980s and 90s, scientists began extracting DNA from bones, first from recent specimens, then from older ones. The challenge was immense. DNA decays quickly after death, especially in hot or humid environments. Most ancient remains are contaminated by bacteria, soil, and even modern human touch. But in 1997, scientists achieved the impossible. They sequenced fragments of Neanderthal DNA from a 40,000-year-old bone. Suddenly, we weren't guessing anymore. We were reading. And what we read surprised us. In 2010, a full Neanderthal genome was published, and comparisons with modern humans showed something incredible. Interbreeding had occurred. Most people outside of Africa carried 1% to 2% Neanderthal DNA. It wasn't a theory. It was inside us, and it didn't stop there. Later that same year, in a cave in Siberia, scientists extracted DNA from a tiny finger bone and discovered an entirely new species, the Denisovans. Not because of how the bone looked, not because of its context, but because of its genetic code. We hadn't just discovered a lost cousin, we had discovered that DNA could resurrect the forgotten, mapping ancient DNA. How do you find DNA in a fossil? Carefully, very, very carefully. Otter labs that handle ancient DNA are some of the most sterile places on Earth. Scientists wear full bodysuits. Samples are handled in clean rooms. Every tool is treated to eliminate contamination. A single flake of modern skin cell could ruin the process. Once extracted, the DNA is amplified, copied millions of times, and sequenced. Scientists look for unique patterns, mutations, and markers that can be compared to known genomes, and then they map it. This mapping has revealed shocking connections. For example, Denisovan genes are found at high levels in Melanesians, but barely at all in East Asians, suggesting different migration paths or multiple waves of interbreeding. Neanderthal genes, too, vary. Some populations carry more than others. And in Africa, new studies suggest traces of other, unknown hominin species that haven't yet been found in the fossil record, but that live on in the genes of modern people. They're called ghost populations, humans we've never seen, but whose DNA speaks through us. It's a revolution of shadows, a whispering chorus rising from ancient blood. The role of radiometric dating. Of course, DNA is only part of the story. To understand when something happened, we need time. That's where radiometric dating comes in. Every radioactive element decays at a known rate. Carbon-14, for instance, breaks down at a predictable pace, making it useful for dating organic materials up to 50,000 years old. For older fossils, other methods are used: uranium series dating, potassium-argon dating, thermoluminescence. These techniques allow scientists to pinpoint the age of bones, tools, ash layers, even cave paintings. Without dating, we would have only bones, but no chronology, faces, but no context. With it, the past becomes a timeline. We can say with confidence, this child was buried 60,000 years ago. This spear point was made 500,000 years ago. This species disappeared 30,000 years ago. Time is no longer a mystery. It is a map. Archaeology. Reading the earth, fossils and DNA are powerful, but the places they're found tell their own stories. Archaeologists study not just what was left behind, but where and how. A fire pit tells us someone gathered wood. A cut mark on bone tells us someone carved meat. A burial tells us someone grieved. In France's Grotte du Renne cave, ornaments and tools once attributed to modern humans were found in layers with Neanderthal remains. This sparked fierce debate. Did Neanderthals make them? Did they learn from us? In Denisova cave, layers of sediment contain DNA from multiple species, not just bones, but ancient skin cells and fecal traces preserved in dirt. Even without finding full skeletons, we can now know who lived where and when. It's like reading ghost footprints. Every layer of soil is a sentence. Every artifact, a word. Together, they form a language, the language of lost worlds. Facial reconstruction and forensic artony, of the most powerful tools in modern science, is also the most emotional. Instruction. Using fossil skulls, forensic artists and 3D modelers can recreate the faces of our ancestors. Skin is layered over bone, muscle by muscle, nerve by nerve. Eyes are placed, hair is imagined, expression returns, and suddenly, the past has a face. These reconstructions are not perfect. They're educated approximations, shaped by anatomical science and creative interpretation, but they are powerful because they make ancient humans real. A Neanderthal child with freckles and amber eyes. A Denisovan girl with a broad nose and thick hair. A Homo floresiensis woman with wide cheekbones and intelligent eyes. They look back at us not as relics, but as relatives, and in that gaze, something changes. They are no longer just bones. They are people, technology, and the future of human origins. Tools of paleoanthropology are evolving rapidly. CT scanning allows us to peer inside fossils without damaging them. Isotopic analysis tells us what ancient people ate: mammoth or fish, berries or roots. Dental plaque preserves microbiomes, revealing their health and habits. Even dirt can speak. Environmental DNA in cave sediment can identify which species passed through a site: human, bear, hyena. In 2022, scientists announced a breakthrough in paleoproteomics, studying ancient proteins, which can survive where DNA has decayed. This opens up possibilities for analyzing species millions of years old, and AI is entering the field. Machine learning is helping sort fossil fragments, reconstruct broken skulls, and even predict evolutionary relationships that humans might overlook. The past is being read not just by archaeologists, but by algorithms, and with each advance, we get closer to the truth, not just of what happened, but why it mattered. A story still being written every year. New discoveries rewrite the human story. In 2019, Homo luzonensis was identified in the Philippines. Small, mysterious, previously unknown. In 2021, fossils in Israel revealed a possible new species, Nesher Ramla Homo, a population that mixed Neanderthal and archaic traits, living alongside modern humans. In Africa, deeper analysis of early Homo sapiens fossils is challenging the idea of a single birthplace, suggesting a pan-African origin, with multiple regions contributing to our emergence. The story is growing more complex, not a ladder, but a web, not a straight line, but a forest of paths. Some end in others merging, and somewhere in that forest, we walked. Why it matters, you might ask. Why does any of this matter? Why care about extinct humans? Because they are not truly extinct. Not completely. Their genes are in us. Their tools inspired ours. Their questions of life, death, love, survival are still ours. To understand where we came from, understand who we are. We are not alone in our humanity. We never were. And in remembering them, we become more whole. Because a species that forgets its ancestors forgets itself. In the next part, we'll explore the rise of Homo sapiens as a dominant species, not just through tools or biology, but through myth, language, and social bonds. What made us different, and what, in the end, made us the last humans standing? The answer may lie not in our strength, but in our stories. They were stronger than us. Neanderthals could survive cold we could not bear. They hunted mammoths with weapons we only later improved. Their eyes took in the landscape with a focus we may never match. The Denisovans scaled mountains and lived where oxygen thins. Homo erectus persisted longer than nearly any other hominin in history. Even the tiny hobbits of Flores adapted to island life with a brilliance we barely understand. SOYS. Why Homo sapiens? Why are we the last ones standing? What secret did we carry that allowed us not only to survive, but to thrive, to leave Earth, touch the stars, and ask questions like this one? It wasn't muscle, it wasn't numbers, it wasn't even tools. It was something stranger, something invisible, something in the way we connect to each other and to the world around us. Let's explore the possible answers, not just from fossils and genes, but from the threads that wove our kind together while others slowly disappeared. 1. The power of symbolism. 100,000 years ago, long before cities, long before fire was tamed in hearths, humans in Africa began carving red ochre. It wasn't functional. They weren't shaping tools or spears. They were making marks, symbols, patterns, abstract designs. We found them in Blombo's cave, South Africa, tiny geometric figures scratched into stone. Alongside them, perforated shells, likely used as beads, pieces of a world not built on utility, but meaning. And that was our secret weapon, symbolism. We began to think in metaphors. A necklace wasn't just decoration, it was identity. A burial wasn't just disposal, it was remembrance. A painting wasn't just art, it was story, myth, memory. This symbolic thinking allowed something new. Collective imagination. We could picture gods we'd never seen, empires not yet built, threats not yet here, futures not yet real. That gave us coordination, shared identity, unity across tribes, and that made us unstoppable. 2. Language. The invisible tool. No tool in human history has been more powerful than language. Not fire, not the wheel, not the spear. With language, we transferred knowledge across generations. Do not eat that plant. Hunt near the cliffs when the sun rises. The ones with heavy brows live beyond the hills. Avoid them. But we didn't just share facts. We shared ideas. We gossiped. We imagined. We told stories. Stories are the glue of civilization. They make strangers into allies. They create rules, customs, belief. Other hominins likely had basic language, grunts, gestures, even complex calls. But Homo sapiens developed something more flexible, more layered, more recursive. We could speak of things not present, of things that never existed. We invented futures. We invented fiction. And in doing so, we rewired the world. 3. Social complexity. And trust is rare in nature. Most animals live in small groups where everyone knows each other, family units, packs, troops. But Homo sapiens learned to trust beyond blood. We created clans, tribes, networks. We married outside our groups. We built trade systems. We shared food. We cared for the sick. At sites like Kafsa and school in Israel, we find early burials with grave goods, beads, red ochre, antlers. At Shanidar in Iraq, Neanderthals also buried their dead, but our graves suggest a growing complexity in ritual, in emotional connection. Where others may have competed, we cooperated. Where others survived in family bands, we thrived in coalitions. Anthropologists suggest humans can maintain stable social ties with up to 150 individuals, the Dunbar number. But with symbols, language, and rituals, we pushed past even that. We created societies, and societies survive what individuals cannot. 4. Versatility and adaptation. Modern humans are weirdly adaptable. We can live in deserts, tundras, rainforests, highlands. We eat everything: meat, plants, shellfish, insects, grains. We can run long distances, float on water, sleep in caves, or build skyscrapers. This flexibility may have given us the edge. Other humans were highly specialized. Neanderthals, for instance, were superb cold weather hunters. But when climate shifted rapidly, their specialization may have become a trap. Homo sapiens, by contrast, adapted rapidly to new diets, environments, and threats. We didn't just settle in one niche. We carried fire into every corner of the earth. And when things got tough, we moved. Mobility, combined with memory, gave us a survival algorithm. 5. Innovation and learning. 50,000 years ago, something shifted. Suddenly, tool technology exploded. We see bone needles, fishhooks, tailored clothing, projectile weapons. Art appears across continents. Music emerges, flutes made of bird bone. What happened? Some call it the cognitive revolution. Maybe it was genetic, a mutation that altered brain connectivity. Maybe it was social, a threshold of population density that sparked cultural leaps. Or maybe it was environmental, a period of stress that forced creativity. Whatever the cause, Homo sapiens began innovating at a pace no other species matched. We didn't just copy, we transformed. And when ideas spread like fire-hardened spears or bowstrings, they didn't stop at the inventor's grave. They traveled across generations. We invented culture, and culture remembers what evolution forgets. 6. Interbreeding and absorption. Another uncomfortable truth. We may not have outcompeted other humans in every case. We may have merged with them. Genetic evidence shows repeated interbreeding with Neanderthals and Denisovans. While some of this may have been isolated, other cases suggest long-term coexistence, perhaps even alliance. In some regions, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens shared territory for thousands of years. Over time, their distinct identities may have blurred. They didn't vanish, they became part of us. We didn't destroy every cousin, we absorbed them. And their best traits live on in us today: stronger immune systems, altitude tolerance, skin variation. Survival wasn't pure victory. It was integration. 7. Timing and luck. Not every explanation is triumphant. Some of our survival was simple luck. We may have passed through bottlenecks, narrow windows where only a few hundred humans survived. Others may have faced extinction-level events, volcanic winters, drought, disease. Homo erectus survived longer than any human species, almost 2 million years, but they disappeared quietly, perhaps outpaced by newcomers. The hobbits may have been wiped out by a volcanic eruption. Denisovans may have been fragmented by geography. In some cases, we may have been simply in the right place at the right time. We caught the winds that others missed. We rolled the dice and survived. The legacy of survival. Buying the last doesn't make us the best. It makes us the inheritors. We are not the sum of our weapons or our cities. We are the memory of every human that came before, every child buried in ochre, every handprint on cave walls, every fire lit in the dark. Our survival has given us responsibility. To remember. To understand. To imagine what could have been and what still could be. Because survival is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of understanding. What if others had survived? Imagine a world where Neanderthals still lived in the highlands of Europe, where Denisovans traded with Himalayan villagers, where hobbits wandered the jungles of Indonesia, cautious but curious. What would we call them? Animals? People? Would we give them rights? Citizenship? Love? Or would we fear them? This thought is not idle fantasy. It challenges our idea of humanity itself. And it reminds us, our survival is not proof of superiority. It is proof of possibility. Final thoughts. Why did we survive? There is no single answer. We sang songs while others were silent. We imagined gods while others dreamed in shadows. We built alliances, remembered myths, and drew animals on cave walls with hands dipped in pigment and awe. But perhaps, in the end, we survived because we never stopped asking, what else is out there? That question is dangerous. It leads to conflict. Curiosity often does. But it also leads to fire, to stars, to understanding. We are the last humans, but we are not the last question. In the next part, we explore the aftermath, how Homo sapiens went on to reshape the world entirely, from hunter-gatherers to farmers, from tribes to empires, from coexistence to domination, and how the loss of our cousins may have changed not only our biology, but our soul. We survived. That much is clear. We crossed deserts, sailed oceans, climbed mountains, and turned them into altars. We domesticated fire, then fields, then animals, then each other. But survival always comes with a price. Sometimes it's paid in blood, sometimes in memory, and sometimes in silence and the ghosts we no longer see, the names we never learned, the cousins whose bones lie beneath our feet, nameless. We are the last human species, but the path that led here was not smooth. It was carved with extinction, the death of diversitians. The world was full of humans. Not in the modern sense, not billions of nearly identical minds navigating cities and screens, but real diversity. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Erectus, Floresiensis, Luzonensis, Red Deer Cave people, and maybe others we've never found. Each was a different expression of what it meant to be human. Different answers to the same problem: how to live and how to endure. And now, one species remains. The loss is not just biological, it is conceptual. We lost alternate versions of intelligence, different ways of seeing, different cultures, different dreams. Imagine what the world might be like if those other humans had survived. How would we think about race, about kinship, about rights and value? Would humanity mean something broader? Instead, we live in a world where sameness was the winner. Not the kindest, not the wisest, but the one best able to outlast the rest. Did we kill them? It's a question we keep circling back to because we're afraid of the answer. Some scientists argue that Homo sapiens directly contributed to the extinction of other humans. Through conflict, competition, disease, resource exhaustion. In many places, the timeline is suggestive. Shortly after our arrival, they vanished. In Europe, Neanderthals disappear within 5,000 years of Homo sapiens arriving. In Asia, Denisovan DNA fades from the record. In Flores and Luzon, the timing is harder to pin, but the pattern repeats. We enter, they vanish, not instantly, but steadily. Course, climate change also played a role. Ice ages came and went. Forests became deserts. Food supplies shifted. But we adapted. They did not. And maybe that's what we did best. Adapt at the expense of others. Is that evil? No, but it is real. And if our ancestors did drive others to extinction through action or presence or pressure, then we carry that legacy too. Survival isn't always noble. Sometimes it's just brutal. The psychological cost, but it wasn't only them who paid the price. We did too. We lost something. When the last Neanderthal died, we didn't just gain territory, we lost a mirror. They were not us, but they were close. Close enough to challenge our uniqueness. Close enough to force us to ask, what does it mean to be human? And maybe that question made us uncomfortable. So we buried it. We drew lines, created hierarchies, built religions that placed us above animals, and forgot that once we weren't alone. In that forgetting, we lost part of ourselves, a kind of humility, a kind of kinship. We became the only storytellers, but we lost the other voices in the chorus. Domination as destiny servable wasn't enough. Soon, Homo sapiens wanted more. We didn't just endure, we conquered. First nature, then each other. The Neolithic Revolution, the shift from foraging to farming, gave us control over food, but also created inequality. Land ownership, patriarchy, slavery, cities rose, armies marched, empires claimed. And all the while, the story we told ourselves was this: we survived because we were better. That idea, that survival is proof of superiority, became dangerous. It fed colonialism, eugenics, genocide. It justified treating other people as less than human. After all, hadn't we already outlived other humans? Didn't that make us chosen? In that twisted logic, the price of survival became something monstrous. We didn't just kill Neanderthals, we learned how to kill each other, efficiently, systematically, without remorse. The burden of memory. And yet, memory haunts us. We find Neanderthal bones, and we reconstruct their faces with tenderness. We give them names. We call their deaths a tragedy. We speak of them with a quiet guilt because we see ourselves in them. And on some level, we remember. Not consciously, not genetically, but mythically. All around the world, ancient stories tell of other people not quite human, not quite beast who lived before us. Forest dwellers, tricksters, giants, small ones who whispered in the dark. Could these be garbled memories of encounters with other humans? Could the Ibu Gogo of Flores, or the Almas of Central Asia, or the Yeti, be echoes of real beings? We don't know, but even our dreams seem to mourn what we lost. Loneliness at the top. There's a strange irony in being the last. We won, but there's no one left to share the victory with. We gaze into the stars and wonder if we're alone in the universe. We build robots to mimic us. We create AI to talk to. We play with the idea of reviving Neanderthals through cloning. Because maybe we're tired of being the only ones. Survival without companionship isn't glory, it's isolation. And sometimes, the past whispers, you were never meant to walk alone. A cautionary legacy understanding the cost of our survival isn't about shame, it's about responsibility. We are the inheritors of a vast, tangled, and sometimes painful history. One that includes brilliance, compassion, creativity, but also conquest, extinction, and erasure. And now, we face choices of our own. Climate collapse, mass extinction, war and inequality. We know what it's like to outlive others, but do we want to live in a world where we are once again the last? This time, the ones at risk aren't cousins in the shadows. They're elephants, bees, coral reefs, cultures, languages. Each vanishing leaves us more alone. If survival is our legacy, perhaps compassion should be our future. In their honor, we owe them something. Not guilt but remembrance. When we look at the stars, let us remember those who never got to see them. When we explore Mars, let us carry with us the echoes of other humans who walked with us long ago. Let us teach our children that humanity is not a single species. It was once a family, and every fire we light in the darkness is a continuation of theirs. Because we did not survive alone. We survived because we once had company, and perhaps, someday, we will again. In the final part, we'll turn our eyes forward, asking what it means to be human today, in a world shaped by that ancient legacy. What should we carry with us? What must we leave behind? And what happens next in the story of the last humans? What does it mean to be human? It's a question we ask often, but rarely stop to answer. Is it our intelligence, our creativity, our emotions, our cruelty? We build cities, launch satellites, write symphonies, and wage wars. We split the atom and name the stars. We dream of immortality, but still fear the dark. But if the past has taught us anything, from the Neanderthals who buried their dead to the Denisovans whose genes still live in our blood, it's that humanity is not defined by one species, or one culture, or one moment in time. It's a mosaic, built by many, remembered by one. And now, as the only humans left on Earth, we carry that mosaic forward. So, what does it mean to be human? Now, 1. To remember we're the only species that remembers on purpose, not just through instinct or habit, but through story, through language, through ritual. We build monuments to memory. We write down what happened, not because it's useful, but because it matters. We remember our ancestors, even when they look different from us. We reconstruct their faces from bones and call them by name. We keep their stories alive, even when those stories are incomplete. To be human is to refuse to forget. It's to carry the dead with us, not in sorrow, but in honor. Because their story is our story, and forgetting them would be forgetting ourselves. 2. To imagine a lion does not dream of being a bird. A tree does not plan a new forest. But humans, we imagine worlds that do not exist. We imagine gods, futures, fears, and possibilities. We imagine utopias and dystopias. We imagine ourselves in other people's shoes, and sometimes, even in other species. This imagination drives our art, our technology, the compassion. It makes us capable of both incredible creation and terrifying destruction. And it began, perhaps, with a simple ochre symbol carved in a cave 100,000 years ago, a mark that said, "I was here." I imagine something more. To be human is to dream beyond your own lifetime. It's to build for tomorrow even if tomorrow never comes. 3. To connect. No human survives alone. From our earliest days, we huddled around fires, shared stories, and buried our dead with care. We held infants, tended the sick, fed the hungry, mourned the lost. Other animals form bonds, but humans create networks. We form tribes, communities, nations, ideologies. We build friendships that span continents. We fall in love with people we'll never meet in person. We create digital villages to replace the physical ones we lost. Connection is not just a feature of humanity. It is its foundation. We are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the fiercest, but we are together. And that has made all the difference. 4. To destroy this, too, is part of being human. We are capable of devastation on a scale no other species has ever matched. We wipe out ecosystems, pollute oceans, shatter cultures, burn forests, bomb cities. We invent ideologies that justify genocide. We enslave, we silence, we erase. We do these things not because we are inhuman, but because we are human. To deny our capacity for destruction is to deny part of our truth. But to acknowledge it is to reclaim the power to change. Because destruction is a choice, and we are not bound to it. 5. To create meaning. The universe does not care. The stars do not applaud. Time does not reward kindness or punish cruelty. But we do. We invent meaning. We say, "This is sacred. This is right. This is love. This is wrong." We build systems of ethics, religions, philosophies, not because the cosmos demands it, but because we need it. We cannot live without meaning. And so we create it, day after day, generation after generation. That's not weakness, it's defiance. It's us saying, even if nothing matters, we will make something that does. That is profoundly, painfully, beautifully human. 6. To Chongeno. Other species adapts like we do, not just physically, but culturally, emotionally, morally. 1,000 years ago, slavery was normal. Today, we condemn it. A century ago, women couldn't vote in most countries. Today, many lead nations. We are not fixed. We are in motion. Our evolution is not over. It has simply shifted from biology to behavior, from DNA to ideas. And that means hope is real. Because change is possible. To be human is to look at a broken world and say, "This isn't enough," and then try to make it better, even if we fail, especially if we fail. 7. To wonder. At the core of everything from our first myths to our latest telescopes is one simple emotion: wonder. We look at the sky and ask, why? We look at death and ask, what next? We look at each other and ask, who are you? No other creature builds cathedrals to questions, but we do. Because to be human is to never be satisfied with what is, to always hunger for what might be, to stretch the mind across oceans, lifetimes, galaxies, and still come home. The weight of being the last. We are the last humans. That truth should humble us. It means we carry the memory of every other kind of human that ever lived, not just in our genes, but in our stories, our art, our grief. It means we are responsible for more than just ourselves. We are caretakers of a story that began long before we were born, and that may end long after we're gone. What we do with that story, whether we honor it, distort it, or forget it, will define what kind of humans we truly are. Because being human isn't just about being alive, it's about being aware. A final thought. On day, perhaps thousands of years from now, someone will look back on us. Maybe they'll be human, maybe not. Maybe they'll dig up our cities and wonder who we were. Will they find ruins of cruelty, or monuments of compassion? Will they see us as conquerors or caretakers? Will they find echoes of the Neanderthal, the Denisovan, the forgotten cousins? Will they say, they survived, and they remembered? Or will they say, they survived, and forgot why they mattered? That choice is ours. It always has been. Because to be human is not to be something once and forever. It to choose again and again who we want to be. This is the end of our journey. From the distant origins of ancient humans to the complex legacy we carry today, we've walked side by side with the shadows of those who came before us. Let us remember them, let us learn from them, and let us never forget. Being human isn't a destination, it's a story. And that story is still being written. So now, the story rests. We've wandered through time, through bones and myths, through loss and wonder, and somehow, here we are, still human, still searching. If you're listening to this with the lights low, maybe already tucked under the covers, take a moment, breathe. You are part of a story that began long before memory, and it continues gently, quietly through you. Whatever tomorrow brings, remember, you carry ancient strength. In your thoughts, in your questions, in the quiet way you care. You are human, beautifully so. Rest well tonight. Let the echoes of the past cradle you gently into sleep. And until we meet again in another story, good night.